20 years of my life, I was like, I could never build a business by myself. That's so crazy, and I could never be an entrepreneur. It's so risky. Or I hate running. I'm not a runner. Or I'm awkward on camera. I thought that for a really long time, not even giving myself the chance to get good on the camera. It's too late to start on YouTube. Oh, I believe that for years. I kept telling myself, oh, you should have started when you were 15, when you were 16. That was like really YouTube's heyday, and it's too late to start now. It's too late. And I told myself that every single year. And the problem with that is the more you think these things, you start to identify with those beliefs and you begin to accept it as fact. You don't question it anymore. So I'd love for you to take a second and think about what beliefs you have that you accept as fact. The reality is a lot of your identity can be fluid. It can be what you want it to be. I thought I could never have a green couch. That's true. I thought that was so crazy and so eccentric, and I'm such a rule follower, I could never buy a green couch. Then I bought a green couch. You can just do that. We have free will. And I know it's confronting to look at some of these beliefs and be like, is it true? So I'm not saying you have to dismantle all these beliefs right now. I'm just saying the next time something comes up that tells you you can't do it, ask, is that really true? So essentially this book is a book about self-sabotage, why we do it, and how to stop. And if you're saying I don't self-sabotage, because don't you though? When I first saw this book and it said transforming self-sabotage into self-mastery, I was like, I don't self-sabotage, this book's not relevant for me. So here are some signs of self-sabotage. See if you can find yourself in them, because I can definitely find myself in all these. Always being too busy. Perfectionism, huge issue for me. I'm not ready yet, it's not perfect yet, I need to work on it a bit more. Your inner critic is really loud. Your inner critic is that little voice inside your head that's like, that's not good enough, why are you doing that? That's so stupid, why'd you do that? Unrealistic expectations. So telling yourself, if you don't make 100K this year with your brand new business, it's ruined, you should just give up early. Judging others harshly. This one is a really interesting one, because oftentimes I think when you really want something deeply and you see somebody else doing exactly what you want, but you're not allowing yourself to have the thing you want, you end up projecting your own desires onto that person, being like, I can't have it, why should they be allowed to have it? Oh my gosh, like why did she film it this way? I would have done it so much better. Another one, endless justification. Have you ever hung out with someone where you're like, why aren't they already doing that thing? Like they obviously want it so bad, but they just have so many reasons for why they can't do it. Another sign of self-sabotage is always playing the blame game. So it's always somebody else's fault why you can't do the thing that you desperately want. And of course, I know there are actual things externally that sometimes prevent us from having what we want. So there is a line there. I totally understand, and I recognize that privilege is a thing. I recognize my own privilege as well, but I will say gently that there is more often more in our control than we think there is. Another one, deep resistance to what you want, which I have experienced a lot. Like when somebody brought up the topic of YouTube or business, I was always like, oh, like it was like a recoil from my body being like, I could never, oh my gosh, that's so wild that I couldn't do that. That would be like deep resistance. Like my body was pushing against this thing. And actually in another book, The War of Art, the author actually said, if you feel that deep resistance to something, that often doesn't mean you deeply don't want it, because if you deeply don't want something, you'll have no reaction to it. You'll just be like, oh, that's not really fun. But if you have this like deep recoil resistance, it might be a sign that there's something there to examine that could potentially be interesting for you. So self-sabotage is essentially a coping mechanism. It's how we numb ourselves to what we really want and give ourselves a little bit of a temporary relief from recognizing the underlying thing. Another sign of self-sabotage, shiny object syndrome. So you know the people who jump from new thing to new thing, all of it without finishing any of those things to completion. So if you're doing any of these things, don't worry. I did as well. All of these things I have done. And it's just so funny that at some point in time I thought I don't self-sabotage. Girl, you do. Okay, so let's talk about why we actually do this. If we truly want something, why isn't our brain just supporting us and being like, you go, you got this? So the second lesson from this book is that self-sabotage is actually a form of self-protection. So Brianna says, we refuse to consciously meet our innermost needs, often because we do not believe we are capable of handling them. And I read that in the book. I was like, interesting. Because that is true. For a long time I was like, you can't start YouTube, because if you start YouTube and you fail, I'm not capable of handling that. If I succeed and lots of people are watching me, I also can't handle that. I can't handle either scenarios. Both scenarios are scary. So self-sabotage isn't really you trying to destroy yourself or your brain trying to destroy you secretly for some whatever reason. It's actually survival mechanisms to keep you safe so your survival needs are met. And of course in modern day society, when I talk about survival, I'm not talking about like hunter-gatherer, a lion is chasing me, I might not make it till dinner survival. I'm talking really about the survival of our ego, right? That's what we're always trying to protect. So for example, if you're afraid of being seen, which I am as well, then your brain is going to do everything it can to prevent you from sitting down and filming a YouTube video, filming a TikTok video, filming an Instagram reel, and posting that, because it wants to protect you. A lot of people have a lot of opinions and they might type them in the comments, and that threatens your need for acceptance from other people and belonging in the tribe. So this is essentially how our mountain forms. Just like how mountains are formed by like two pieces of earth pushing, our internal mountain is kind of formed by two coexisting needs. So the top need is the conscious need. That's the thing that you think you want, right? So that might be things like, I want to move to my dream city, I want to travel the world, I want to start a business, I want to build a YouTube channel. That's the conscious need. But underneath that are the unconscious needs. So that's needs that we're not fully aware of most of the time. So these needs might be need for validation, need for belonging, need for safety, need for control. When you try to do anything out of your comfort zone, you have to give up some control, some certainty in exchange for potentially what might happen. So until you figure out the core need behind your self-sabotaging behavior, the pattern will just keep repeating over and over. So let's talk about the difference between core commitments and core needs. And this was one of the biggest things I took from this book. I read this book years and years and years ago. It is the one thing I have never forgotten. So core commitments are what you think you need. Core needs are what you actually need and aren't letting yourself have. And the interesting thing is your core need is normally the opposite of the core commitment. So you're trying to get a lot more of a commitment over and over and over, and that doesn't fulfill the core commitment. The only thing that will most of the time is the opposite of it. A core commitment could be things like you thinking you need control, which for me was a huge issue, and it still is sometimes. And often what you think solves that core commitment is more of that core commitment. So then you start to control even harder, right? You start planning everything, you organize everything perfectly, you think through the worst case scenario a million times, holding on even tighter. And what Brianna says is actually the only way to fulfill your core commitment is by giving yourself the core need. The core need, if you desperately want control, is to trust in yourself and others. And that blows my mind. I can't even tell you how much, because trying to get more control over the situation doesn't really fulfill that need for control. It doesn't solve the problem. What does solve the problem for me now is trusting in my ability to figure it out. Trusting in my ability to handle what happens. Trusting in others' abilities to help me if I need help. Self-trust, I will just say, this is my little caveat, I think is the number one thing most people who struggle and get stuck in business like I did should work on. Trusting yourself, not just in the decisions you make, but trusting yourself that if you make a decision that is less than optimal, it will still be fine. You will figure out a way. Another example of a core commitment, thinking that you need everyone to like you, which is, I have all these problems actually. You think that the way to address people all liking you is to people please, right? You keep making yourself smaller, you keep abandoning yourself, you keep putting other people's desires and wishes above your own, thinking that that's going to solve the need for everyone to like you. When in reality, the core need of that you should actually be giving yourself is self-worth, to feel worthy without performing, to build your relationship with yourself so that that confidence comes from within, so that you stop abandoning yourself. Another example, your need for everything to be perfect, right? I need to be perfect for things to be worthwhile. Anybody that struggles with perfectionism, which it's me, I promise me, knows that spending 4 million hours on something doesn't actually make you feel like it's actually perfect. It makes you actually feel like insane, first of all, and second of all, it makes you feel like there is no end in sight. There is never perfection. You will just keep working on it forever. The core need of that is to be accepted as you are, which is imperfect. Another need, core commitment, needing constant validation. It's not the case that if you get 100 comments telling you that you're amazing, you're gonna feel 100 times better. Like that's not. It's just an illusion. Because if you build up all of your self-worth on what other people have to say about you, then there's that fear that they can take away because the power is with that. So the core need that Brianna says here is self-acceptance. That is the only true source of validation that can fulfill you. I know it's very hard, and it's not something that I just tell you and you're like, okay, perfect, yeah, thanks so much. It's something you need to work on. And I know a lot of people don't want to work on it. They want the short-term band-aid solution. Imagine for a second, you trust yourself 100%. You accept yourself 100% as you are. There's nothing you have to change about yourself. You are exactly the way you are, and it is perfect. You know everything is going to work out in your favor. What would you do today? And if that is not what you were planning on doing today, then there's probably some self-sabotaging. Imagine we all operated like that. The world would be a magical place. So a lot of this self-sabotage, I think, comes from the inability to be uncomfortable. And I am just saying this as queen of discomfort avoidance. So please do not feel called out because I'm sure whatever you're doing, I'm doing it twice as bad. So the third lesson is to really work on not burying uncomfortable emotions. So when you don't allow yourself to feel emotions like these weird emotions in terms of like anger or grief or shame, you bury it all in a cute little puddle. And that thing becomes a trigger because you haven't addressed it, you haven't processed it.
The
It's just, most of us have their landmines. We buried a lot of things, and there are landmines everywhere.
Pure
and the second someone touches something that's a little bit sensitive for us, because we haven't processed it, it becomes a trigger for us to react in ways, to sabotage ourselves in ways, to create all this other kind of weird behavior that we're like, I don't know why I did that. Emotional intelligence means being aware of your emotions, allowing them to come through, not just intellectualizing, my therapist tells me that all the time, but actually allowing yourself to feel emotions. When you're sad, you cry. When you're angry, you stand up for yourself. So it's really important to listen to those triggers and what they're trying to tell you. So here's some examples. I love this slide. So if you're feeling regret often, so for example, for me, every year I told myself you should have started YouTube last year. I was feeling so much regret. So what regret was trying to tell me was, do it now. Yes, maybe you should have started years ago. It doesn't matter. You can't go back in time. Do it now. Another one, if you feel yourself getting angry, triggered, anger is a very healthy emotion, according to my therapist. She says gives us the energy we need to take a stand and to take action for ourselves. Oftentimes, anger is the peak state we reach before we make a huge change in our life. And I have experienced this many times where I was stuck in my head for a really long time about a bunch of things, blah, 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 looping. And eventually I got so fed up with myself and I was like, I don't even care about any of that anymore. I'm going to do the thing. And then my brain was like, yeah, but what about? And I was like, shut up. I'm done with that line of thinking. I'm gonna go do this thing now. And that is the power of anger when you use that energy for good. Another trigger, jealousy. When you notice yourself getting jealous, it is a great moment to pause and be like, what about this person's life or business or attitude or mindset am I feeling like uncomfy with? Because every time I have been deeply jealous in my life, it has been because that person had something I really wanted. And sometimes I didn't even consciously realize that's why I was jealous. Sadness is a good indicator that there's something valuable there, something meaningful was lost, and it shows you oftentimes what you deeply value as well. So if you're often sad about the same things, what is it about that thing that you deeply value? Guilt is a good trigger to show yourself where you fell short of your own expectations and a reminder of how you want to do better next time. Also a really good one. Embarrassment, I feel like often comes from there being a disalignment between who you are and what you show to the world. And I think, this is my theory, I don't know if this is true, I feel like sometimes when other people are like, oh, that's so cringe, it is because that person is showing up exactly as they are, maybe totally honestly, maybe it is a little embarrassing, but they don't care. And that triggers me because I'm like, I can't show up like that. That would be insane. And then I feel like then often people project and they're like, that's so cringe. So how do we get those triggers? Examine them, journal them, see what's going on, tell us in the comments if you feel brave enough to share, but no pressure. So when it comes to business, when it comes to starting a dream that you desperately want to have, this is how I would love to challenge you to develop your emotional intelligence, because it is a skill and it takes time.
Out of the mountain of villains in Final Fantasy XIV.
Let's go. What? It's a two-headed Leviathan. Woo, this song. That was great. A most emphatic victory, Will. Unfortunately, we cannot yet be certain the ether is behaving as predicted. Oh, snap. Here it is. Oops. I forgot my microphone. Here it is. That was incredible. Is that what a primal looks like? Oh, she's never seen a primal before. That's so cool. That was an awesome fight. I loved that. That was so good. Not quite the same then. But why is that? The Leviathan of the Source was summoned by the Sahajin, to whom he was no less than a god. Without their faith, the deiform entity that we brought into existence differed on a fundamental level, though it was no less formidable. The manifestation relied upon Will's experiences of Leviathan and may have been influenced by the recollections of other water aspected beings, leading to further discrepancies. Memories brought to life. But I still can't tell if our plan actually worked. We'll just have to wait and see, I guess. How goes it? If we finish slaying your primal or whatever it is, I suggest you get back here on the double. It's something you ought to see. Ba 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 Well, look. Aw, there's water at the empty now. And there's a giant water crystal. What the heck? What is that crystal doing there? Is it a mother crystal? Da-na-na-na. Look at that. Oh my goodness. 'Tis a marvel to behold. I never thought that a whole lake would suddenly appear like this. And we're just getting started. I only hope the burden is not too much for you, Will. I am ready. Let's go. I'm gonna do all of Eden today. Or try to. Try to do all of Eden today. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba. You know, when I first heard Oriage's plan, I didn't know what to expect. But then that enormous crystal appeared and water came gushing forth, and well... Such a profound transformation, though the change appears to be limited to an area no more than a few moms in diameter. Look at this. I think this proves that the water aspected ether is no longer lying dormant. So which element should we realign next, Orion J? I propose Earth. Should we succeed in returning the soil's life-giving energy, the empty shall become capable of supporting the growth of flora. Imagine that. Forests in the empty. But before we begin, I'd like to know how that girl is doing. Still sound asleep. She didn't so much as stir even when I took her helmet off. I thought it might be getting a bit stuffy in there, and I was curious to know what sort of person we're dealing with. She seems surprisingly normal, not at all like your usual void sense. I'd say she's around the same age as you, Rain, perhaps a little older. Well, whoever she is, we should let her rest while we concentrate on the task at hand. As much as I'd love to go with you, I'd best stay here in case she wakes up and is feeling less than cooperative. And while I wait here, wishing I had something to read, my thoughts will be with you as you fly off to face the next opponent. It must be a strange feeling to bring something into existence through your own willpower, only to slay it immediately after. I almost feel sorry for the poor things. All the same, I wish you luck. If all goes well, he won't be waiting for long. The sooner we get this over with, the sooner we can see the results. Ba-ba-ba. Ba-ba-ba, ba-ba-ba, ba-ba-ba. Water, earth, fire, air. I like that it's going one after the other. Like it's really real snappy, real quick, short cutscenes. All right, let's go. Bah! Yeah. Da 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 ba 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 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the last of the first set. Ba 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 Ba-da-bum-bum-bum-ba-dum. 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 Ba-da-bum-bum-bum-ba-da. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-da. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-da. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba. Ba-ba. Ba-ba.
There is one that stands on top, at least in terms of popularity, and that's Ffxiv. And well, it's not hard to see why. While I adore the simplicity of Xenos in a single-minded quest in pursuing the Warrior of Light, there is something deeply moving in the complexity that is Ffxiv. However, that's not the first impression you get from him when he first makes his appearance. But the following scene is pretty lengthy, but I think it's important to start with this to set the stage.
I should be the one to sigh. I played my part to perfection. I had earned my rest, and then thanks to La Habrea's crowning act of idiocy, our favorite emissary sees fit to summon me back. Elidibus was ever a warrior. A most tiresome trait, would you not agree?
Alright,
Have you no words for
Claire.
me either? No matter. I've long grown weary of this mummery. Now, my dearest grandson, let me remind you of your place in the simplest of terms. You do not make judgments, you administer them. Swiftly and to the letter. Naught else is your concern. Olympus may not suffer more than no fool. His choices as emissary seldom err.
Where for over 1,000 years, humans have... I'm sorry, I can't do this with a straight face.
High-tech anal beads vibrating in a chess grandmaster's ass.
Come on, wake up, you stupid mouse.
The yogurt controversy,
Thank you. No, what? 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 What?
You really playing the Karagan?
No.
No worries, no worries.
We're living through what might be chess's weirdest cultural moment. Thanks to streaming and COVID lockdown and the Queen's Gambit, it's more popular than it's been in decades. Everyone's playing it. Your little cousin is trash-talking about en passant and joining roaming chess gangs.
Why chess has been suspended till further notice. Roaming chess gangs interrupt matches during lunches. Skipping class time to play chess. You're here for school, not chess. Get a grip, stop obsessing.
There are chess influencers, chess streamers pulling six-figure viewer counts. Magnus Carlsen is doing fashion collabs. Hell, you probably know who Magnus Carlsen is. And yet, at the exact same time, at the highest levels of the game, nobody can agree on whether anyone is actually playing it. Chess has become a sport where the actual chess can sometimes be almost secondary to the metagame of accusations, statistical analysis, and terminally online beef, where former world champions spend more hours crafting conspiracy theories than opening prep, where a teenager can beat the world's best player and immediately get accused of using vibrating sex toys to do it. This is about what happens when human achievement becomes indistinguishable from machine performance, when the very thing that makes you great also makes you suspicious, when paranoia becomes the rational response to competition. Chess has become the perfect microcosm of every anxiety we have about technology, authenticity, and competition in 2025. It's a 1,500-year-old game colliding with AI, streaming culture, and late capitalism in some truly buck-wild ways. And somehow I got completely obsessed with it. A year ago, I didn't know what a fork was. All I knew was the horsey moved in an L shape, and the queen was an overpowered MILF who could go anywhere she wanted and take anyone she desired, including me. She can get it. 6 months and 1,500 rating points later, I've learned 3 things. The horsey is actually called a knight. Blundering your queen makes you want to throw your laptop out a window, and every single time you lose online, a tiny voice whispers, "My favorite cheetah." And that's the thing about chess in 2025. It's what game designers call a game with perfect information. Unlike poker, where cards are hidden, or sports, where a gust of wind can change everything, chess lays it all out. Nothing is hidden from either player, just pure crystallized decision making. Which sounds great until you realize what this means now. Computers are really fucking good at crystallized decision making. Your phone, the thing you're probably watching this on while procrastinating, could beat or tie the top 5 chess players in the world playing as a team, while running on battery saver mode, while you have 47 Chrome tabs open. I also want to be extremely clear about something. When I talk about chess computers being good at chess, I'm not talking about some massive high-tech machine. I'm not even talking about something you have to figure out how to download from GitHub. Stockfish, for example, is a completely free open source computer and is probably the most powerful in the world. And you literally do not need to know anything at all in order to use it. If you want to know what move to play in any chess game right now, all you have to do is go to any chess website, Lichess, chess.com, and click on the thing that says analysis board, and you can put in any position and it will tell you exactly what to do. Or you can download any of the literally hundreds of free apps where the selling point is take a picture of this chessboard and the computer will tell you what move to make. Or straight up just go to a website whose entire purpose is to analyze chess positions. If you Google what chess move do I play, it will give you one as the first result. I cannot stress enough how easy it is. A child could do it. Children do it. Children must be doing it because I keep getting beaten on Lead Chess by people who are very visibly 8, and I need to believe they're cheating or I am literally never going to emotionally recover. Imagine you're a professional chess player in 2025. You've dedicated your entire life to mastering patterns, calculating variations, understanding positions, and now a free app does it better than you ever will. That's existentially terrifying enough. But then add this, you kind of have to play chess online. For content, for practice, for qualifications, for money. Except online, your opponent could be anyone. A child prodigy, a retired grandmaster, or just some guy with Stockfish open in another tab. Every game becomes an exercise in paranoia. Did they find that brilliant move because they're good or because their phone told them? You literally cannot know. And that's where our story really begins. Because when you can't tell the difference between genius and deception, when the tools of cheating are identical to the tools of improvement, when accusation becomes more profitable than competition, things get weird. But they've also been weird for a while. Chess has been around in one form or another for approximately 1,500 years, and humans have been finding ways to cheat at it for approximately 1,500 years. So first and foremost, how? What does cheating at chess even mean? Well, chess moves aren't subjective. There's always an objectively best move in any position. Or two, there might be several moves in a position that are equally good, but the point is, it is a real mathematical thing. So, for example, look at this chess position here. There are tons of possible moves you can make here, but only one is the best move. Moving your bishop to c7 checkmates the king and wins the game. Any other move you could play would either lose you the game or do nothing useful. For example, if you moved your knight to f5, you'd just be losing your knight for no reason. But this is true for all moves in chess. Look at this position. Putting your rook on d4 attacks two pieces at the same time, and once you've traded queens, you get a free knight. After the moves are all made, you will have one more piece than your opponent does. Again, here, tons of possible moves you can make, but one makes your position vastly better than the others. Even when there isn't an obvious tactic like this, there is always just a best move. And not only that, but a computer can tell you exactly how good or bad every single possible move in the game is. It's looking at things like, who has more pieces? Are those pieces in a good position? For example, if your rook is trapped behind pawns, it can't really do anything, so the computer would say your position is bad. Does your opponent have a queen when you don't? The computer is probably going to say your opponent is winning and you hate women. Computers can recognize this and objectively say, I've looked 40 moves ahead and this is the best move you can play. And to a lesser extent, humans can do it too. What this means is that unlike physical sports...
Welcome to Debt Free in IT. I'm your host, Mike. This podcast is for anyone who's looking to get into the IT industry, whether it's for a career change or you're just interested. I think you come to the right place. In today's episode, it's all about why no one wants to be a network engineer. So I'm sure you've probably seen on the internet, heard from a coworker, or maybe you're trying to get into the networking field and you've been told that networking is dead, networking is going away, AI is going to replace network engineers. So today, we're going to discuss why you may be hearing that networking is dead, also some of the cons of being in networking, some misconceptions of networking, and how I think this is going to create a great opportunity for all networking professionals. So first, let's look at some of the cons of being in networking. So first off the bat, networking ain't really as hyped up as cybersecurity or the cloud. So a lot of times the cloud is some of the newer technologies that's been around for a couple years. You hear about that more. You also hear about cybersecurity more than networking. Any kind of advertisement, if it's for tech, usually it's going to be one of those two. Then also, when looking at those two roles, so cybersecurity and cloud roles, a lot of times they end up being fully remote. So even though a lot of places is going back in office, you still can do some hunting around and possibly land a cybersecurity role where you may be fully remote. So in networking, you're 9 times out of 10, you may not be fully remote. So, because usually with networking, like I said, you got the infrastructure to look after, you're supporting the infrastructure. So if some of that equipment goes down, someone has to be on site in order to replace that equipment and get everything back up and running. With that being said, you know, in networking, sometimes you may see where the lower position may not be totally remote, where usually they may have to come in, let's say that technician, they may be the one that's doing the racking and stacking. So usually they may not be fully remote. They may have maybe 1 or 2 days remote. And then some places, as you go up the ladder, you go up the networking hierarchy, you move up to that analyst, that engineer. Usually they may have a couple more days remote other than being in the office. But for the most part, there's still plenty of places out here that everyone on the networking team is in office every day, because from that networking aspect, that's your whole infrastructure. You know, without the network, if the network ain't running right, ain't nothing else running correctly. So network engineers, networking technicians, networking admins, a lot of times it's hard to find some of these roles that's fully remote. You know, there are some out there here and there. There are very, very few of them. But like I said, it's hard to find some of those roles that's fully remote, where in cybersecurity, you're able, if you're on the information side of the house for security, you're able to be anywhere and pretty much be able to work for a company. Your home base may be in a whole other state, and that's very possible with cybersecurity and also with some cloud roles. So you're able to find more remote roles for those positions than networking, which I think draws more people in because, like I said, who wouldn't want to work at home and don't have to make a long commute? So that's one of the first cons to being in networking is that cybersecurity in the cloud, like I said, is much more advertised more, and then you're still able to find some totally fully remote roles in those positions right now. So the second con to being in networking is that networking is very hands-on. So in networking, you will be configuring physical pieces of equipment, then racking and stacking that equipment. So for some folks, they may not want to be that hands-on, so they may opt for a position that may not have as much equipment as networking. Because you think about it in networking, every one of your closets, you have your data center. Every organization, if your organization consists of multiple buildings, you got to think all of those buildings have networking closets, and all of those buildings are going to have your pieces of equipment in it. So it is, if you look at it piece by piece, it's a lot of pieces, a lot of equipment to be able to manage. So which means that equipment don't stay up and running forever. So if you're in a large environment, it could come to the point where you may have something that goes down quite often. I'm not saying every day, because most of the time these switches and devices, they're built to run for years. But you do have some use cases where some may end up causing issues. It may be an iOS issue that makes the device go down, or it could be a stat ring broken that makes the device reboot. But in this role, in this field, networking, like I said, it's very hands-on. Some people may not like that. So and then when you flip it to the other side of just going down the path of learning networking, I think that turns some people off, because with networking, it is a whole bunch of information at once. So it may, someone coming into it may get overwhelmed with it quick and opt to just go to a different position or just try to learn something different. So they may go to cybersecurity. But in the real world, you understand that, okay, you can't be good at cybersecurity without being good at networking. So it goes hand in hand. But I think just the presentation of networking, all the information that's presented when trying to learn networking, and then when you take that to the job, just being very hands-on movement every day, which for me, it made the day go by faster because you never knew what each day may bring. So some days you may be on the go a lot, some days you may not be on the go a lot. But to me, I liked it because it switched things up for me where every day wasn't the same. So that's what you get with networking. It's hard to predict your day. Where if you're doing another position, let's say a server admin, where most of your devices is virtual or most of your servers is virtual, then if you're having issues, you still can handle that from your home, from the comfort of your home, or if you're in office for a couple of days, you're at your computer handling it. Long as it's not a hardware issue somewhere. Most of the time, if it's a server issue, 9 times out of 10 in these days, that server is possibly virtual. So you're able to handle it from the comfort of your home, from the comfort of your desk. You don't have to get up and go. Where in networking, it's not uncommon to maybe start out at home. If you end up getting a remote role or you got a couple days remote, you may start out at home, but you may end up at a physical location where, okay, we're having an issue at this location. I'm the closest one on my team, so let me go and look at this issue and see if I can get it resolved. So in networking, there's a lot of moving parts, which I think turns some people off, which is why you may hear people say that networking is dead and that networking ain't a good field to get into. So the last con to being in networking is that networking is high stress, high responsibility. So in networking, it is a little bit more stressful, because like I said, you're supporting the infrastructure. There's more responsibility. Usually in networking, you can't afford to really make mistakes with your configuration. So if you configure something, you can't really afford to just make a whole bunch of mistakes. Now, mistakes will happen because usually that's how you're going to learn from it. You're going to learn from making your mistakes, but you can't just go in there and making all kinds of mistakes. So, and a lot of times the organization will have some kind of check ties to it, to where if it's a large configuration change or a big change, you may not be able to just go in and make that change on the fly. Usually you have to go through some kind of change control where you push it up the ladder that, hey, I need to make this change on this devices or these couple devices, push it up the ladder, get it approved by the right personnel, and then it's on the calendar. So when it's on the calendar, everyone in that department, in that IT department sees that, okay, on this day at this time, you're about to make this change on the network, or you're about to make a change to this certain part of the network, or to this organization, or to this building that's in your network. You're about to make that change, but everyone knows it. That way, everyone can prepare for it ahead of time. So it's not like you're going in off the fly and just, I need to make this change, let me go ahead and do it. Bang. So a lot of times you're not really doing it like that. There is some check ties to it, but at the same time, like it is a high stress, high responsibility depending on the role that you're in. So there's a lot of monitoring and networking, so you're monitoring the network. And like I said, at any given time, something can go down. Doesn't happen often, but it is possible for something to go down, which then if it's one of your main devices or something that takes down a lot of the infrastructure, then it quickly goes from a regular day to maybe a high stressful day. So like I said, in networking, you do have a lot of, I ain't gonna say a lot of stress because it just depends on the organization, but there is a lot of responsibility because once you get in networking, you got the keys in your hand. So it's almost like you got keys to the kingdom almost. So where, okay, if you misconfigure something, it's not uncommon to shut down a whole department. It's not uncommon for, because mistakes do happen. And I think that this is one of the things that may draw people away from networking is that it is high stress, high responsibility for most folks where, usually everything that's going on in your organization, 9 times out of 10, you probably got someone from networking involved on that issue. So usually network, we're pulled into all the issues. No matter if it's a network issue or not. If it's not a network issue, usually we're there to prove that it's not a network issue. So we got to prove that it's not the network. Most of the time, anything that happens, first thing most people say is, oh, it's a network. So a lot of times we may be dragged in on those calls or in those meetings where we just got to prove that, hey, it's not the network. There's something going on over here with this particular device that belongs to this other team. So all of that happens inside of networking. So which I think that may be my last con to being in networking. So next, let's look at some misconceptions of networking. So these are the things that I think a lot of people have wrong about networking. So one of the first ones that stands out is, like I said, most people may think that network engineers don't make good money. So you can't be more further from the truth. Now, if you look at it, I say on an entry-level basis, if you compare an entry-level networking role to an entry-level cyber role, a lot of times I think that cyber role may end up paying a little bit more. But as that experience evens out, so as that entry-level cyber person, entry-level networking person make their way up the ladder, I think the pay starts to get kind of close to where networking usually gets paid pretty good. Usually I would say you can get 6 figures if that's your mark in networking, as well as cyber, as well as cloud. So all of that is going to depend on your experience. So the term that, okay, network engineers don't make no decent money, it can't be no further from the truth, because there's plenty of positions out there. If you look up network engineer in your town, I guarantee you find something that's at least over 6 figures or even close to it. So I think that, a lot of people just see the cyber, and cyber is one of those fields where I've seen folks with maybe 1 to 3 years experience that can hop into a cyber role and end up making decent income just from the jump. Where usually with networking, you do usually have to work yourself up to where you may start out as that technician, and then depending on your area, pretty much all the pay is going to depend on the area. So if you're in a large city, usually you're going to get paid more anyway than in a smaller town. But usually networking, before you get through the big money, and I'm saying the big money, most people consider that 6 figures. So before you get to that, usually in networking, you're probably going to have at least probably 3 to 4 years of experience in just networking or more. So, and usually, like I said, on the cyber side, that's probably possible before you hit those years. So, like I said, overall, I think both of them probably even out to where you can do good in networking, you can do real good in cyber. But that's one of the misconceptions that most people have about being in networking. The next misconception I hear a lot is that most people say that since everything is moving to the cloud, networking isn't needed anymore. So pretty much I say that's not true either, because even though you're in the cloud, you have networking there also. So if you look at it, a lot of these popular cloud vendors, AWS, Azure, Google, all of them have networking certifications within their cloud lineup. So they have a cloud specialty certification for AWS. You have some form of networking certification for Azure. So most of these environments, like I said, you still have that networking aspect. And then when you look at the different organizations, so most of these organizations are not putting everything in the cloud. Most of them, I would probably, if I had to take an educated guess, I would say that most of them is probably running a hybrid model to where they still have some traditional networking infrastructure, then they have a connection to the cloud where they maybe have some servers or something like that in the cloud also. With that being said, so that network engineer is still needed there, or that network personnel is still needed there to support that network infrastructure. So whether it's traditional networking or whether it's going in the cloud and networking in the cloud. So the networking aspect is still there. I don't really think there is a way to get rid of the networking aspect, because everything runs on the network. So if you think about it, if you're in a server position, you have networking there. In desktop position, you're connecting to the network. Everything pretty much goes back to that network. So that's why I'm a big proponent of pushing understanding networking. No, even from a basic aspect, I think it helps you out. I'm not saying that everyone has to go out and get a CCNA, but it is a good certification. But everyone don't have to go out and get it. I'm just saying have an understanding of networking. That way, when you're doing other specializations or you're going down your cloud road, you're going down your cybersecurity realm. When you're in cybersecurity, you start hearing terms like TCP, UDP, understanding different port numbers and things like that. You need it from a networking aspect. That's some stuff you learn in networking. So when you get in cyber, it makes it a little bit easier to understand, because now you're taking that concept you learned in networking and then you're adding on to it. So one of the misconceptions, most people say that networking, since it's in the cloud, you ain't gonna need networking no more. That can't be no further from the truth. And then the third misconception is that AI and automation will make network engineers obsolete. So that can't be no further from the truth either. So I think with AI and automation, it will make networking more efficient, but still there's someone that has to be able to support those two pieces also. So with automation, that's coming along in networking. So, and I'm gonna touch on that a little bit later, but that's coming up in networking, where a lot of companies now, they maybe have moved on to their networking environment, maybe utilizing SD-WAN, maybe utilizing some kind of programmability on their network, some kind of automation. So I think with automation and AI, it's not here to replace anything. I don't think it's gonna replace no network engineer, but I think it will make that network engineer position evolve to something more.
Usually leaves evidence, track marks, blood tests, a literal deflated football. This kind of cheating can be virtually undetectable. The best move is the best move, whether it comes from your brain or from a chess computer running on a burner phone in the bathroom. And that best move can come from anywhere else too, whether that's another person telling you what to play, a computer calculating moves for you, secret signals from an accomplice, notes you've taken about how to play a certain opening, or anything outside of your own brain. Therefore, the problem becomes as simple as, how do you get this information to the player during a game? And humans have been finding creative solutions to this problem for literally centuries. Let's start with the most basic form of cheating, just moving pieces when no one's looking. Or moving a piece, realizing afterward that it's a bad move, and being like, no, I was just adjusting it, bro. This was such a problem in medieval times that they had to make a whole rule, which is still in effect to this day. If you touch a piece, you have to move it, no takebacks. Even then, chess was often played for stakes, so if you were playing shit moves and taking them back, you were being unfair to your opponent. King Canute of Denmark allegedly felt so strongly about this that when a nobleman tried to pull this move in 1027, the king's response was swift and proportional. He fucking killed him. Different times. That's how seriously people took chess integrity in the Middle Ages. You could die for takebacks. People still try this, by the way. 1967, Yugoslav Grandmaster Milan Matulovic pulls this exact same thing. Moves his piece, doesn't just touch it, moves it, realizes he's fucked, then decides to just boldly, brazenly take the move back anyway. He said je double, which means I adjust. Matulovic went on to win the game. He did, however, get a nickname that haunted him forever, Jadubovich. Any form of fixing results could also be cheating, as it would in any sport. So fast forward to 1880 America, where we get maybe the dumbest cheating scandal in chess history. Preston Ware takes a bribe to throw a game, to deliberately draw the game and have it end in a tie. Pretty standard corruption, right? Except when they sit down to play, Ware's opponent starts actually trying to win, and Ware is furious. He complains to the newspapers that this is unfair. They had a deal. He literally snitched on himself for match fixing in print because he was mad his opponent was being unsportsmanlike by playing chess. But the greatest pre-computer chess scandal has to be the Mechanical Turk. For 84 years, this chess-playing machine toured the world, defeating everyone from Napoleon to Benjamin Franklin. In 1770, this guy Wolfgang von Kempelen builds what he claims is a chess-playing robot, a mechanical man that could beat anyone at chess. It's the 18th century, before electricity, a chess AI. And like, don't get me wrong, people broadly knew there was no way it was a real intelligent chess-playing robot, but what people were not able to figure out was how. The machine was this elaborate cabinet with a mannequin on top, and before each show, they'd open all the compartments to prove nobody was hiding inside. Someone was hiding inside. It was basically every AI-powered startup that turns out to be 3 underpaid dudes in the global south. The Mechanical Turk walked so Engineer.ai and Scale Factor could run. Essentially, they would hire a chess master who would scrunch themselves into an impossible position, moving between compartments as they were opened, controlling the Turk's arm with levers while tracking the game on a magnetic board by candlelight. Imagine being folded like a pretzel for hours, playing chess in the dark, trying not to cough while Napoleon is literally 3 feet away. And winning! In fact, as long as we're talking about Napoleon and cheating, he cheated too, against the Mechanical Turk.
What the heck is that? Nice. Very cool. I love that fight. Na 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 na. Hey, there you go. Bunch of rocks. Huh, I knew something was gonna go wrong. I knew it. I didn't know what was gonna go wrong, but I knew something would go wrong. Huh. That's the same magic she used on us.